Okay, welcome friends. Tonight's topic is biggest stage with auction properties. It is one of my favorite topics, and I can't wait to share everything that there is to know about auction properties and how you can not only benefit from the process, but also help other people in financial distress. So we're going to start by one thing. You've got to understand the foreclosure process. So in a nutshell, what is it? How do properties go to an auction? The reason why is because a homeowner takes out a loan from the bank and they made a commitment to pay a mortgage payment. But for whatever reason, they fell behind the mortgage payment, and then the bank is not happy. So the bank is going to say, okay, you made a promise to pay me back, you have not, so either you come current or I'm going to take the property away from you. So when the owner does not come current with the loan, eventually the property is going to get auctioned off, okay? So one of the things that you've got to understand is that there are two types of states in the United States, judicial and non-judicial, okay? Illinois happens to be a judicial state. As you can see, most of the Midwest and part of the East Coast are judicial states. So what does that mean? What do we care about these? Whether Illinois is judicial, non-judicial, well, friends, it is critical for you to understand. What that means is that the foreclosure process is going to be regulated by the court system if it's a judicial state. Again, I'm going to repeat this. Make sure you write this down. It means that the foreclosure process will be regulated by the court system, okay? Whereas non-judicial states will not be regulated by the court system. Therefore, judicial states will take up to 2 years to foreclose on the owner, whereas non-judicial banks can foreclose and in as little as 6 months, believe it or not. So that explains why the West Coast and the Midwest and some of the states in the Midwest have rebounds a lot quicker. So when the burst of the 2008 bubble, guess what markets rebounds quicker? Well, the West Coast, California, Arizona, and all judicial states are going to rebound last. Okay, so that is one of the drawbacks. And also, that is something that you need to keep in mind, up to 2 years for the foreclosure process, because when we look at properties on different phases of the foreclosure process, we've got to keep that in mind, okay? That the foreclosure process can take up to 2 years. The average is about 1.5 years. Okay, but it can take up to 2 years. So now let's go over step by step on what happens, right, when the owner falls behind. So once we go over that, we're gonna show you in a very simple way how you can not only help a distressed owner, but benefit in the process. Not only that, but I'm gonna tell you exactly where in the process you need to intercept the properties so that you can get awesome deals at a deep discount, okay? So let's get started. The foreclosure process starts with the borrower, meaning the homeowner, defaulting on the mortgage payment, okay? So what's gonna happen after the owner is behind the mortgage payment, 30 days, then the bank is gonna start sending letters, the bank is gonna start making phone calls, okay? So at that point, the owner is aware that the owner needs to come current with the loan. Otherwise, they will enter the foreclosure process. So the next step is, obviously the borrower will try to attempt to catch up with the payments. However, if nothing happens, right? If the owner is unable to come current with the payments, right? Within 90 days, right? 3 months, what's going to happen? The bank is not going to be happy, okay? So at that point, the bank is going to say, well, you've made attempts to come current, but you have done nothing about it. So at that point, the bank is going to serve the notice of default, okay? So this could happen between the third month and typically between 3 to 6 months. That's when the bank will officially file a lawsuit against the owner. Remember, we said Illinois is a judicial state. So what does that mean? That means that the bank will need to file a lawsuit in the court system. And then the legal term is lien pendant. So at that point, the borrower is going to be given a notice of default. So it's official, the owner is in, we call this pre-foreclosure, okay? Why pre-foreclosure? Because at this point, we do not have a date where the property is going to get auctioned off. So that's going to be coming up next, okay? So then, as time goes on, what happens? So the borrower is given more time to catch up on payments, right? So at this point, 90 days could go by or even longer. So the average, friends, is about 9 months to a year, okay? So the bank is still going to be waiting for the payment, for the owner to come current. If that does not happen, guess what's going to happen? At that point, the judge, through the court system, is going to issue what's called the notice of trustee sale, okay? Again, at this point, the judge is going to issue the notice of trustee sale. So it is official. At this point, the owner is in foreclosure, okay? That is why you're gonna hear many terms on the auctions. So you're gonna hear trustee auctions, sheriff's auction, judicial auction, or just auction by itself. They all mean the same, okay? So that is when the property is going to get auctioned off, okay? At the courthouse in the county where the property belongs, okay? So again, the judge will issue the notice of trustee sale. That means the owner is officially in pre-foreclosure, okay? I mean, officially in foreclosure. So it has gone beyond the pre-foreclosure stage. So this is one of the most important stages for you to understand. Why? Because at this point, guess what's going to happen? The owner will lose the property very, very soon, 30 to 45 days from this time. So the owner is going to be extremely motivated to do something about it, especially if the owner has equity on the property. Because if they do nothing, guess what? They're going to lose the property, they're going to ruin their credit, and they are going to not be able to buy another property in the next 7 years. Okay, so that's a big deal. So the next step is, once the notice of trustee sale has been issued, the borrower is given only 21 days to make the payment, or the property is going to go for auction. So what's really powerful, friends, is that you are going to get notified in these two different stages that we've talked about. You're going to get notified at the pre-foreclosure level, and then at when the judge issues the auction date. That is we call this upcoming auction. Okay, that is one of my favorite lead pipes because owners are extremely motivated. Whereas when the owner is still in the pre-foreclosure stage, many of them are still in denial, okay? So they're hopeful they're gonna come current with the loan, and they may not, okay? So that's a big problem. So the next step is that eventually the property goes to the auction. I'm talking about the auction at the courthouse in the county where the property belongs, okay? Again, you're gonna hear many terms: sheriff's auction, judicial auction, trustees auction, or just auction itself. But they all mean the same. It's at the courthouse. And then at that point, this is where many investors come and they try to bid on the property. And if for whatever reason nobody buys the property, then it becomes an REO, which means that the lender takes the property, okay? And then at that point, it's called shadow inventory. Why? Because now it's technically in the bank's books. Now, something to keep in mind, friends, is that we highly recommend for you to never go to the judicial auction or the sheriff's auction. Why? Because there are many risks, many disadvantages. I'm gonna just mention a few of them. First of all, when you go there, you're gonna be sitting in a room with a lot of investors. They're like sharks. You're gonna be in the shark tank. So these investors will probably know more about auctions than you will. And these are many of the drawbacks of going to the auction. First of all, you need to pay cash for the property. Number two, and for me, this is one of the biggest issues, you buy sight unseen. Most of these properties, you will not be able to see them from the inside. So that's one of the biggest issue. Why? Because many investors have lost thousands and thousands of dollars when they bid on a property that is worthless, because from the inside it's all destroyed, okay? So that's one of the risks that you take. And the third drawback is that since you're in a room with other sharks, they're going to be overbidding, right? Therefore, you may end up overpaying for the property, right? So this is not where you need to be, okay? I'm going to show you where we need to intercept the property so that you can make a decent profit and buy the property at a deep discount, okay? So what happens next? Once the bank has taken possession of the property, it's an REO. So the lender manages the property and prepares for sale, okay, just in the market. So usually nowadays, well, the average I would say is 30 to 60 days, not 180 days. That's I would say the extreme. Usually 30 to 60 days, so a month to 2 months before the property offloads the property back into the market. So the bank is going to do one of two things. It's going to give it to an REO broker who's going to put it on the MLS, or is going to send it to the auctioning platforms online, such as Hubzu, Auction.com, Hudson and Marshall, and Williams and Williams. Okay, so at that point, the real estate or the REOs, the property is offered for sale by the lender through a broker or through the auctioning platforms. And then finally, the property gets purchased by a third-party owner. But at that point, you don't want to buy the property all the way at the bottom or the last stage of the foreclosure process because you might end up overpaying for the property again. Once it hits the MLS, then everybody knows about that, right? So I'm going to show you the stages where you need to buy the property at. There are only 3 stages that you have to buy the property. So I will quickly show you where. So here it's the whole entire foreclosure process. And the 3 places where you need to buy the property. So first of all, first step, somebody misses a payment, you know, the bank is going to be chasing them. So 30 to 90 days. And then it's going to be reported to the credit bureau. But if the owner, for some reason, doesn't pay the mortgage, then it's going to be official that the bank is going to file a lawsuit in the court system against the owner. So it's called a lien pendant, okay? So at that point, it is official the owner is in pre-foreclosure. And through ChicagoDealVault, you're gonna get notified about that. So pre-foreclosures, we have in the system, those are updated. Pretty much all the data for the off-markets are updated daily. So every foreclosure that comes every day, you will see those in the system on a daily basis, okay? So this is where we need to connect with the owner, right? And try to buy the property. Now, as you can see here, there's one secret. We've got to target high equity properties. So what does that mean? high equity. So as you can see the example that I have, the after repair value on a property is 150,000. So the property owned by the owner is worth 150,000 after all the repairs are done, right? However, the owner only owes 50,000 on the property. Therefore, the owner has equity of about $100,000. So we're going to be targeting properties with at least 50% equity. So what does that mean? That means that if the property is worth 150,000, we want the owner to have an outstanding loan amount of no more than 75,000. So half of what the property could be worth. Okay. Why? Because we're going to have enough bargaining power. We're going to have room to get the property at a deep discount. That is one of the problems that many investors have when they pursue foreclosure properties. They just go after all foreclosures, okay? And that's a big mistake, because within the foreclosures, you're going to run into owners who are underwater. What does that mean? So that means that they owe more than what the property is worth. Figure that. So that means that they may owe, if the property is worth 150,000, they may owe 200,000. So they are 50,000 underwater. So we, as investors, do not pursue those properties. Okay. There are other investors who do. That's a very specialized niche. Why? Because at that point, when the water is underwater, they have two options. One, if they decide to stay in the house, right? They don't want to move out. They want to keep their home. The only option they have is to do a loan modification, okay? Through the existing bank, they can do a loan modification, or they can utilize a mortgage broker to somehow do a loan modification that will allow them to still keep the property, but under different terms. So in other words, lower interest rate. So the payment is more affordable. And maybe the type of loan is different, maybe interest only. So they can do a loan modification that would allow the owner to stay in the property. Now, if the owner does not want to stay in the property, if they want to sell the property, but they are underwater, the only option they have is to pursue a short sale. So what does that mean? Again, if the owner owes 200,000 and the property is worth only 150,000, the owner is underwater 50,000. So at this point, the bank needs to authorize the short sale. So what does that mean? That means that the property cannot be sold for 200,000 that it's owed to the bank. It may be sold for 150,000. So what happens to the difference? Okay, who takes the hit? In this case, the bank is going to take the hit. It's the bank is going to need to do authorize that transaction, because it's going to be a write-off for the bank. So in other words, a loss for the bank. However, pay attention to this, friends. Many banks, not all of them, but many banks will file a deficiency judgment against the owner. So what does that mean? That means that the owner is going to have a judgment in their credit for the difference. In this case, if the property gets sold for 150,000, but the bank was owed 200,000, then the difference of 50,000 goes against the owner, okay? And then eventually the owner has to pay that amount, and it's gonna go in their credit report. So that's called a deficiency judgment. However, many banks don't pursue a deficiency judgment. So for those owners, it's important to find out if the bank, assuming they authorize a short sale, whether or not they're going to file a deficiency judgment against the owner. That is very important, okay, to find out. And then not only that, let's assume that they do not file a deficiency judgment, but the bank will for sure issue a 1099 for the difference to the owner. So for 50,000, What that means is that it's taken into account as an income for the owner, believe it or not. So the 50,000 is going to be issued in a 1099 for tax purposes. So the owner is going to need to pay taxes on that 50,000. So that's how it works. If they don't file a deficiency judgment, the bank is going to issue a 1099, okay, for tax purposes. But again, for our purposes and to keep things simple, we're not mortgage brokers, right? So we cannot help somebody do a loan modification, nor are we short sale brokers, right? So we don't specialize in short sales. So we will not be able to help owners who are underwater. So if the owner does not have over 50% equity, we're gonna skip those properties. We just want to keep it simple, friends, okay? Not only that, but short sales can take up to 6 months, up to a year, okay? And then at the end, once the bank authorizes the short sale, guess what happens? The bank can always change their mind. And then if they authorize a sale, later on, they can say, well, we need more money, and they can raise the price. In fact, that happened to us on a condo in Lakeview. Right, the short sale was authorized by the bank on a townhome, and then we made the offer that would meet the bank's reserves for 330. And 2 months down the road, we found out that the bank said, no, actually the property is worth now 400,000. So you need to offer me 400,000 or we won't sell the property. So we backed out of the deal, obviously. So that is why short sales, they're complicated, but obviously they could be profitable, but we need to keep it simple, right? Let's just keep things very simple. We're going to focus on high equity properties. That's it. Because guess what? There are tons of them, okay? First of all, there are thousands of people in foreclosure. We're not going to focus on the 1,000, right? We're just going to focus on the few dozen deals that have tons of equity, right? Because friends, how many awesome home run deals do you need a year, right? I mean, we're okay with 1 or 2 a year that will net 40, 50,000, right? How many would you be okay with 1 or 2 home run deals, right? Therefore, we just need to focus on high equity foreclosures. That's it. And then that's one of the stages when we're going to need to reach out to the owner. However, keep in mind, at this point, when the bank filed a lawsuit against the owner, they've been behind for about 3 to 6 months. So the owners are gonna still probably be in denial phase. So many of them will not want to talk to investors like you and me because they're hopeful they're gonna get some money from somewhere, somehow to come current, right? They're still hopeful they will not lose the home, or they don't even understand the foreclosure process. So they may not wish to speak to you or me at this point, okay? So if they do not wish to speak with us, what we like to do is, if we see that the property has a lot of potential, we wanna go to the property and door knock, okay? We wanna meet the owner and explain the foreclosure process in a nutshell, right? We're gonna say, you know, I understand you're going through financial distress, but let me tell you, we can help you. We can help you liquidate the debt, and we can give you a relocation package for you to move on and settle somewhere else, okay? Because otherwise, you are going to lose your property, the equity that you have, and it's gonna ruin your credit. So we help them understand the situation they're in, okay? We not only explain to them, but we also empathize with their situation, right? So we build rapport. We understand their motivation, and finally, we obviously try to get them to sign the contract, because we need to get these properties under contract. You're gonna be making money the minute you get these properties under contract, because if these properties have a lot of equity, you don't need to worry about what strategy you're gonna be doing, whether it's a buy and hold, fix and flip, or wholesale. When you find an awesome deal and you get it on the contract, guess what? Any of those strategies are going to work, whether you have money, credit, or not. Why? Because when you have an awesome deal, there are going to be plenty of people who will want to partner up with you. We're going to be utilizing asset-based lenders, right? So if they look at the deal itself, at the asset, and they realize it's got a lot of equity, you are going to get funded, okay? For sure, because they look at the asset itself. They don't look at your W-2s as much as what they're going to be focusing on the asset, because the asset is going to be the collateral. That is why we use hard money lenders, private money lenders for the funding. Okay, friends, so that is the first stage where we're going to be intercepting the properties. And again, friends, these properties are technically not for sale, okay? These are off market. They're not going to be on the MLS, okay? Although there are some owners who are going to try to sell the property through the MLS, right? But there are not too many. That's the sad part, right? Many people end up losing their homes, and that's where we come into the picture. Not only are we going to be able to help a distressed owner, but we're going to benefit in the process, right? So let's assume, friends, time goes by, and then the judge at the 9th month, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th month, the judge is going to issue the notice of trustee sale. So again, that means the judge is going to issue the auction date. So it is official, the owner is in foreclosure, okay? Where the owner is no longer in pre-foreclosure, right? At that point, it is official, the owner is in foreclosure. So the property is going to get auctioned off in 30 to 45 days, okay? But the owner has, at that point, 21 days to come current with the loan terms, okay? And most owners at that point are not going to be able to come up with the money if they have not in the last 9 months or a year. Do you think they're going to pay that off in the next 21 days? No way. So at this point, guess what? These owners are going to be extremely motivated to take action. Why? Because they're seeing reality, right? They're touching ground. They're feeling the house is evaporating, right? The house is going to be gone at the auction. So this is by far one of my favorite lead pipes, because owners are going to be willing to work with you. They're desperate. They want a solution. And guess what? We are the best solution providers. Why? Because not only are we going to satisfy the debt, but we're going to help them move somewhere, right? And of course, in the process, we're going to pick up a property at a deep discount. Okay, that's the beauty. And then here, we're going to call these lead pipe upcoming auctions. Why upcoming auction? Because the auction is going to come down in about 30 to 45 days, up to 2 months, okay? Which is perfect timing for us to take action. Why? Because, let me tell you, technically, if we get the property in the contract today, this is a distressed property, we can technically close in 3 weeks using a hard money lender. Why the 3 weeks? The first week is going to be the attorney's review, inspection, and appraisal. That takes about a week. That's the first week. And then the bank is going to take about 2 to 3 weeks to process the paperwork for the closing. So technically, you can close within 3, at the most 4 weeks, okay? When you use a hard money lender or private money lender. So this is super powerful, friends. So since we're going to be able to close, let's say within a month, we have to find properties that are going to go to the judicial auction in the next 30 to 60 days. Does that make sense? Why? Because if the property, let's say today is May 8th, right? So if the property is going to go for auction on June 8th, so a month from now, that's amazing, because we can reach out to the owner, get it on the contract tomorrow, and guess what? We have 4 weeks to close on the property, okay? So obviously we should be able to close before then, and the owner is not going to lose the property, and we're going to get it for a deep discount. That's the power of pursuing the properties that are going to go for auction in the next 30 to 60 days. Now, friends, if we do nothing in those two phases of the foreclosure process, then the auction comes. Okay, this is, again, it has like 4 terms: sheriff's auction, judicial auction, trustees auction, or auction. Okay, so this is where you do not want to be, friends. Okay, you don't want to show up at the courthouse in the county. Why? Because, again, that's where the sharks are. This is where you are going to be eaten alive, right? You're gonna buy sight unseen, you are going to pay cash, and then you are gonna overpay for the property. So now, let's trace this back. Let's back up a bit to this phase. Notice of trustee sale. What are the biggest benefits, right? Let's just compare. If you show up at the auction versus intercepting the property 30 to 60 days before it goes to the auction, okay? So I just told you the drawbacks, right, of the judicial auction. Now, I'm gonna tell you the benefits of intercepting the property 30 to 60 days before it hits the auction. Benefit number 1 is that you have 0 competition. Why? Because you are not in a Shark Tank, right? You are connecting with the owner directly. It's between you and the owner. Benefit number 2, you are going to be able to see the property from the inside, which is critical, friends, because that's going to allow you to estimate your rehab, okay? And that is super important, and that is going to drive your offer to be made to the owner. The condition of the property from the inside will determine how much you can offer to the owner, right? And that's what makes sense, right? Based on the condition, you're going to make an offer, right? You don't do it the other way around. You make an offer and then find out the poor or great condition of the property. And then benefit number 3 is that we're going to be able to finance the deal. Again, I said we're going to be using asset-based lenders, so like a hard money lender or a private money lender, which is awesome, friends, because we don't need to pay cash. So that is benefit number 3. Benefit number 4 is that the owner is going to be extremely motivated to take action. Why? Because in 30 to 60 days, they're going to lose everything. Does that make sense? Awesome. So, and then at the auction again, we don't want to be there. Next week, friends, we're going to be focusing, next week's mastermind, we're going to be focusing on the second half, okay? We're going to be talking about shadow inventory, right? We're going to be talking about what happens or what could happen at the auction, right? In this case, it could get postponed, it could go back to the bank, it could be sold to a third party, it could get canceled, and then it somehow becomes the bank's asset. So next week, we're going to go through a live exercise, right? How, in this case, we were able to get a property on the contract, and it was an REO property, okay? And we got it through the auctioning platform. So I'm gonna show you, it's gonna be really cool, right? How we were doing the bidding process online and we were able to get the property. So that mastermind is gonna be so awesome, right? But for today's purposes, we're going to be focusing just on half of the foreclosure process, right? Next week, we're going to be talking about the REO. What happens to the shadow inventory, right? To the bank-owned properties. That's going to be an amazing mastermind. So today, at the auction, that's where we're going to leave it. Because the auction can get postponed, right? When can the auction get postponed? If the owner, for some reason, files for bankruptcy. Why would the owner want to file for bankruptcy? To negotiate a short sale with the bank. So they need more time, right? So they're going to file for bankruptcy just to buy more time. It doesn't mean they need to follow through the process of the bankruptcy, right? And then it will just obviously affect their credit. They just need to do the filing to postpone the auction. The auction, that means the property, the second option will return to the bank, so the property will go back to the bank. That's the REO, or the shadow inventory, which we're going to talk about in more depth next week. The third option is that an investor or a shark buys the property at the judicial auction. And most likely, they're going to overpay for the property, and they're going to buy something that they have not even seen from the inside. And then the auction can get canceled. So when can the auction get canceled? So the auction is going to get canceled if, for instance, we as investors buy the property from the owner before the auction happens, right? That is why we're going to be focusing on properties that are going to auction 30 to 60 days from now, because if we pay off the outstanding debt, the auction is going to get canceled. Okay, so those are the four options that could happen at the auction, whether it gets postponed, if the owner files for bankruptcy to buy more time and do a short sale, the property doesn't get sold at the auction, therefore it goes to the bank, then the auction gets bought by a shark or an investor, right, with cash, without seeing the property, and finally an investor buys the property before the auction takes place. So obviously the auction will get canceled. So again, friends, we're going to be focusing today on intercepting the properties at the pre-foreclosure and at the upcoming auction stage, right? We won't obviously be showing up at the courthouse. You never want to do this, okay? Think of this as the Shark Tank. You never want to do that. And next week, we're going to cover the second half. This is going to be so awesome, right? I love this part too, because we picked up a couple of properties from the bank, and they're very profitable deals as well, okay? So we're going to be making money from REOs. We're going to be making money from the upcoming auction and the pre-foreclosure, okay? So friends, now let's jump in the system and then utilize the secrets, right, that I share with you. We're going to be targeting high equity properties. Okay, that's secret number one. And then we're going to be targeting properties that are going to go for auction in the next 30 to 60 days, okay, so that we have enough time not only to get the property on the contract, but to close on the property before the auction, the judicial auction takes place. Okay, so having said that, friends, let's dive into the system. Okay. First of all, let's go to the upcoming auctions. Sorry, the pre-foreclosures. Okay, so off-market properties, then pre-foreclosures. Okay, so that is, we're going to get notified when the bank files a lawsuit in the court system against the owner. Okay, so the owner is going to be in pre-foreclosure. Okay, this happens after 3 months, 3 to 6 months that the owner is behind. So first thing that you need to do is click or select the 50 to 100% equity, right? So we want to target properties with tons of equity, which means if the property is worth 150,000, we want properties that have an outstanding balance of no more than 75,000, right? So that we target properties with 75,000 in equity. Okay, so now through the chat, please, can you send me some areas where you live or nearby areas that you're interested in, so that we can find them. Find some awesome deals in your local neighborhoods. It could be just a couple of them. Okay, so Forest Park. Okay, Downers Grove. Awesome. Lombard. Cool. Okay, so let's take these three just to keep it simple. Well, one more, Palatine. Palatine. Okay, that was awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna click on search, okay? Because remember, most ordinary investors, they go after all foreclosures, right? Which is insane, it's nonsense. They're gonna be wasting their marketing budget for nothing because they're gonna run into cases where the owners have no equity. So it's worthless to go after those properties because unless you're a mortgage broker who can do a lot more modification or you are a short sale expert, then it doesn't make sense. Okay, friends, whoa, look at this. In those areas, we found 62 deals. I mean, like awesome deals. You guys gave me like good areas. All of them are great areas, A and B areas. So let's just pick one for sakes to show you what you need to look at. Okay, so the first thing that I want to look at is the filing date. Okay, why does this matter? Because remember that I told you that Illinois is a judicial state, so the foreclosure process can take up to 2 years. So we need to understand how far in the foreclosure or pre-foreclosure process this owner is. So this filing occurred about 5 months ago, right? Yeah, about 5 months ago. So look, what I like to see is how much the property could be sold for after repairs are done on the property. So up to between 225 to 250, and the owner owes 95. So therefore, there's equity of about 150,000. But I also like to look at, and you have to look at other liens. Okay, what are other liens? Owners may owe money to the village, to the city, to the IRS, to contractors. So there may be mechanics liens, utility bills, to other banks, right? Because they might have a secondary loan, like a home equity line of credit. So all the liens are going to be right here. So guess what? You need to add them up. So this is for, let's say, 10,000. So we have a total of 105, but it's still, right? If the property is worth 230 to 250, we have over 100,000 in equity. So that's a great deal. So the next thing that we need to know, friends, is has this property been bought by somebody else? Okay. So what we're going to do is check the owner on the property. So the owner right here is Joseph Pisula and Gail Pisula. So now we are going to scroll down and click on the owner loan tab. Okay, here's where we access public records. These public records are coming from the main provider of real estate data in the United States, which is CoreLogic. Okay, they govern the data of real estate. Even the MLS uses CoreLogic for their public record information. So at this point, we see that Joseph is still the owner. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and see if there are any other transaction history or open loans. So we don't see anything. There are cases where you're going to see a transaction that happened after the filing of the foreclosure. So we're gonna be seeing cases where there's a transaction that occurred after the filing of the foreclosure by the bank. So that tells you that that property could have been repaid by the same owner or by another investor. Okay, so make sure that you look into the transaction history and open loans. Okay, that's going to be very critical. So in this case, this owner has not made any attempts or has not done anything to satisfy the debt. So he is technically in pre-foreclosure, and probably right now it's the 5th month. I would say in 3 to 6 months, the owner is going to get the auction date. So the owner is going to move from the pre-foreclosure state to the foreclosure state, right? We are going to know the auction date down the road if he doesn't come current. But at this point, it is a great idea to get in touch with the owner, okay? So what's the typical way to get in touch with the owners? So most investors, let me tell you, they're gonna do mailers, which we allow you to do mailers right here. So the middle section of the system is your mailing campaign system. In here, we have templates, letters that you can preview, and then all you need to do is select the properties or all the properties. In this case, the subject property is Glencoe Street, so it is Glencoe, this one, Glencoe Road. So all you need to do is print your own letters and labels, okay? What we're gonna do for you is generate your mailing campaign. What that is the letter that you can mail out to the owner, okay? And wait to see if you hear back a response. Okay, so Joseph. It's addressed to Joseph, okay? And this will have all your contact information, your signature, everything. We will also generate the labels for you, okay? So you can put it in the mailbox. So what we typically like to do is we like to connect with the owner directly via cell phone, text, or email, okay? Why? Because that is more efficient, it is faster, it is cheaper. Not only that, but the success rate is a lot higher. Let me tell you, the open rate in the mailing campaign is about 3%. So what does that mean? If you mail out 100 letters, guess how many responses you're gonna get? If you're lucky, you get 3 responses. So what we like to say is that while our competition is putting the letter in the mailbox, we have already flipped the property. Yes, friends, it is that simple. So we don't do mailers. However, we do print out the letter, the one that I just showed you. We generate it and we print it. Why do we do that? Because we're going to attempt to get in touch with Joseph via phone, text, or email. However, if we are unable to connect with Joseph directly, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do door knocking. So we're going to literally go to the house, knock on the door, and try to get in touch or speak with Joseph, okay? If for whatever reason Joseph is not at home, then we're gonna put this letter under the door, okay? So we're not gonna waste our time. When we go there, we will either speak with Joseph or we will put the letter under his door, okay? So don't make the trip in vain. You've got to do something of value, either put the letter under the door or speak with the owner directly. So how do we get to speak or send a text to the owner? Very simple, friends. All you need to do is click on the owner's name, and what we're going to do is we're going to do skip tracing. Boom. So what we're doing right now is right here. So we're gonna give you his mobile phone numbers, landlines, and this is his number. And look at these, friends. Even the property address, right, matches. So this information is as accurate as it will get, okay? We use a service that is typically used by collection agencies. So collection agencies, when they get a hold of somebody, they use exactly the same system, right? Where you can get the owner or the individual's personal information, such as phone numbers and addresses, okay? So this is the next step that we need to do. Just call the owner. And friends, while we're here, remember, I want to remind you that on the training tab, we have about 7 to 8 videos that are going to show you how you need to talk to the owner. So let me scroll down. All of these right here. So it says build credibility, building rapport, create interest, understand the owner's motivation, qualify them. All of these videos, these are like 10-minute videos each. These are videos are going to give you the confidence to be able to pick up the phone, right? And then not only make an appointment, but assume the closing. So you're going to assume that you're going to get the property on the contract. Okay, so these are very powerful videos that you almost watch, okay? So let's assume that, you know, now at this point we made an appointment, and then we're going to come to the appointment, let's say tomorrow. So make sure you bring the letter in case for whatever reason that you don't see in person the owner. You're going to put this under the door, and also make sure that you bring a copy or a couple of copies in case you need another one of the contract. This is what's going to make you money, friends. Get the owner to sign this contract. So this will have your company name, the property address, and then here is where you're going to make the offer, you know, how much you are going to pay for this property. So let's say we're going to pay no more than 140 or 150. We know this property could be worth 250,000. So we spread, right? Easily, it's going to have even your signature and the date. We're going to have another session just on making offers, and we're going to go line by line on this contract, okay? But at this point, the objective is for you to understand the data, right? What you need to look at. So this is a great deal. So the bank that is filing a lawsuit is Ditech, okay? That's a pretty big bank. And then the bank's attorney is this. So check this out. Something that is important, or that I like to see, when the last payment was made. So the last payment was made in August 1st. So do the math. How long did it take the bank to file a lawsuit against the owner? What's the difference between August through December? So the difference is about August, September, October, November, 4 months. Remember that I told you that banks are going to file a lawsuit in the court system between 3 to 6 months. So Ditech took about 5 months before they file a lawsuit in the court system against the owner. Why did they have to file a lawsuit? Because Illinois is a judicial state, friends. So banks have to go through the court system to foreclose on the owner, okay? Versus or non-judicial states like California, remember? So they don't need to go through the court system. They can foreclose on the owner in as little as 6 months. Why? Because they don't need to go through the court system. Obviously, that's a disadvantage for the owner, but that's how it goes. Okay, so this will just reinforce what we just talked about, right? The time that it takes the bank to wait for the owner to take action, to come current. So Ditech waited about 5 months. The owner didn't do anything, so they filed a lawsuit against the owner. So at this point, the owner is in pre-foreclosure officially. Okay, so now, friends, let's take a look at, obviously at this point, we're going to have other masterminds that we're going to be running numbers, right? I'm going to give you the rule of thumbs on how much you should offer on this property. You need to quickly evaluate the rehab amount. So let me just tell you that because I'm so excited about this. So the way we compute, we think as pros and analyze deals in seconds is as follows. Check this out. So we know the property could be worth up to 250. So you're gonna take 250 and you're gonna multiply these by 70% if you're gonna do a fix and flip. 20% is accounted for your profit and 10% for holding expenses and closing cost. And then that's 175. And then we're gonna deduct the rehab estimate. And to compute the rehab estimate without seeing the property, the way we like to do it is we multiply the square footage by 2. So in this case, it's 22,000. okay? Again, keep in mind, this is just an estimate. You always have to see the property from the inside, and this rule of thumb only applies to BC areas, bread and butter areas. If it's Glencoe, Wilmette, the times two won't work, right? You need to spend more than 20 bucks a square foot. So you might need to multiply that by 3 or 4 to compute the rehab. But we're going to be focusing on just bread and butter areas, BC areas. So the $20 per square foot is very, very reasonable, and it's been very accurate for us. So I'm going to multiply 1,100 square feet times 2, that's 22,000. So I'm going to subtract the rehab amount. We should not offer more than 153,000 for this property. That fast, that simple. If we offer 153,000 for this property, we're going to be able to do a successful fix and flip, like not tomorrow. We're going to be able to do a wholesale. Now, if you're going to do a buy and hold, friends, you can multiply these for, instead of 0.7 or 70%, you can multiply it for times 80%. Why? Because you have more room to work with. You have more time, right? With the fix and flip, you have no time. You need to buy it, rehab it, and sell it. But the buy and hold, you still have some appreciation. You still have cash flow. So you don't necessarily need to buy it so cheap. Sorry. So 250 times 80%, that accounts for 10% profit and 10% holding expenses and closing cost, minus, we said 22,000. Okay, minus the oops factor, maybe 3,000-4,000. So we shouldn't pay more than 175 for this property. Okay, no more than 175. Okay, but again, we have to see the property from the inside. So as you can see, it's between 155 to 175, depending on your strategy. If you're going to do a fix and flip, you need more room. So you shouldn't pay more than 155. If you're going to do a buy and hold, you can afford to pay up to 175. Okay, especially if it's a great deal, great location, then you can afford to pay 175, and the property is in somehow livable condition. So it needs a light to medium rehab, right? That is not a gut rehab. Otherwise, multiplying the square footage times 2 won't work, okay? Okay, friends, so now let's look at the upcoming auctions, okay? So that is our favorite lead pipe. So let's find some awesome deals. Since we're looking at Palatine, let's just focus on just a couple of them, including Palatine. So remember, the secret here is, no, first of all, do the 50% equity, and then the auction date. Remember how much time we need to close on the property using an asset-based lender. We need about at least 3 weeks, right? But we are going to target properties that are going to go for auction in the next 30 to 60 days. So what I will do is I'm going to put my calendar a month down the road. So I'm going to do June 8th, and then the June, and then up to June, July. Yeah, July 8th, or actually I can put 8th of July. Okay. So at this point, we need to put the cities. Palatine, oops, I put another one. So So in fact, if you don't see the city, that means that there are no deals there, okay? So Lombard, Palatine, Cicero, you guys gave me another one. Oh, Park Forest. Okay, awesome. So let's try that. Let's see what happens. 0 properties that are gonna go for auction in 30 to 60 days. So what I'm going to do is, for example purposes, I'm going to put a county, okay? Just to keep it simple and see what happens. Let's focus on, you guys gave me some DuPage. I want to see DuPage. Okay, 10 deals in DuPage County that are going to go for auction in the next 30 to 60 days. Okay, so here, Addison, oh, we found Downers Grove. Perfect, because you guys gave me Downers Grove. So let's just pick this property. And then the first thing that you need to look at is the date. Okay, July 16th. So that is perfect. Now, what is this? This is a property that is 1,200 square feet that could be worth close to 300,000. And it's only 83,000, right? So obviously this is a great deal. Now let's check if this property has been sold. So Kathleen is the owner. Now I'm going to click on owner loan tab and see what happens. Oh, you see this? I see a different. Okay, check this out, friends. I see an LLC here. Okay, and then not only that, but look at the transaction right here. This got sold in March 21st. So the seller, Kathleen, the buyer, the LLC. So the price, $250,000 for this property. Okay. So you see, check this out, friend. So the seller, Kathleen, was being contacted by the investor. So they March 21st. Now let's look at the dates here. The payment amount, was back in 2016, and then the filing date for the foreclosure was May 2017. So this is an old listing, so it took quite a while, but just do the math. Remember, the foreclosure is going to take up to 2. So look at the filing date and add 2 years to that. So 2017, 2018, 2019, about 2 years. You see that? So it took about 2 years for this property to finally hit the auction. Okay, but right before the auction, March 21st, an investor bought the property from the owner. Okay, so that's something that you need to check first before anything else. So these properties that are going to go for auction may have already been sold. Okay, so that's something that you've got to check. That is why we check. This is the public records. Okay, this is the very latest information. Okay, so here we're going to tell you any deeds that have been recorded. So the purchase occurred on March 21st. Usually it takes about 30 to 60 days for the deed to be recorded. Okay, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. If he had purchased the property about a month ago, let's say on April 21st, we may not see the record right here because it takes at least 30 days for the deed to be recorded. Okay, so keep that in mind, that you may call the owner and the owner may tell you, well, I already sold the property. But you're going to say, well, but I don't see here that in public records that you've sold the property. Well, keep in mind that it takes 30 days for the deed to be recorded once a transaction occurs. Okay, so you won't see that in the public records after about 30 to 60 days. So that is something to keep in mind. Okay, friends? So now let's look at another deal. Okay, for upcoming auctions. Let's say this Warrenville is a great area. Woodville, these are all great areas in the page. So let's just quickly look at the same thing, right? So the owner, Eric, right? And the upcoming auction is going to happen in a month from today. So the first thing that I want to know is is this property still available? Or has this been sold? So if I don't see Eric's name, okay, Eric is still here. Eric Simowski, okay? So that means that this property is still available. And then you see this transaction, this is the original, right? Like he bought the property back in 2002 for 183,000. He took a loan for 155. And he's going to lose the property to the auction that is coming up on in a month. Okay, so this is a great deal because he owes 111,000 plus, you've got to add these 23 plus 15. So that is 115, 111. So let me do this. 111 plus 24. I'm adding the liens plus 15. So he owes 150,000. And this property could be worth almost twice as much. So this is a great deal, okay, in Warrenville. So this is an example of a property that is going to go for auction in about a month. So we have enough time to get this on the contract and get it funded before it goes to the judicial auction, okay? So this is a great deal in a great neighborhood that has tons of equity. So we have to pay at least 150,000 to the creditors, and then there's another 150 or 130 of equity. Out of that, maybe you pay 20,000 to the owner, so you can buy this for 175, and then you have still a margin of about 180 to 100,000. Okay, so ideally, you know, this property is in livable condition that requires just a light to medium rehab. But friends, we just found a great deal right here. So what I would do is print out the letter, obviously try to get in touch with Eric. So I just click on his name, boom, we give you his contact information right here, okay? A few emails, he doesn't have a cell phone, and a few numbers, okay? So if you're not able to get a hold of him via phone or email, definitely do door knocking, right? So go to the property and do door knock on the property. Okay. Okay, so one question that somebody's asking is, how do you know the rehab numbers if you haven't seen the property? That's a great question. So these rehab numbers that we have are based on the square footage of the property and the location. But that is just an estimate, right? So you have to see the property from the inside. And then the rule of thumb, Warrenville is it's a B plus area. So what I would like to do is, just to quickly, without seeing the property, I would multiply this by 2. So the rehab could be 32 to 37,000 for the rehab, right? If it's just a medium rehab. So we estimated, you know, the light rehab to up to 30,000. That is based on the square footage. But, you know, I like to be conservative, so I add an oops factor. So I like to add 5,000 on the rehab for unexpected items. So I would say I would account for like a 35,000 rehab on this size property in this neighborhood. So again, this is computed, the rehab amount is computed based on the square footage for this neighborhood, okay? If this was Glencoe, Wilmette, or Northbrook, then the rehab would be a lot higher. Like it could be twice as much, okay? Because the quality of the rehab, what's required by that area, by the people living there, is a lot higher. Friends, are there any other questions on the line? Are there any questions on the line? Because this concludes the training for tonight. And next week, we're going to talk about the second part of the foreclosure process, right? We're going to just focus on shadow inventory, REO properties. It's going to be so cool, friends. And we also have them right here in ChicagoDealVault under bank-owned properties. But for time constraints, we're not going to be able to cover that today, but we're going to cover that next week. So are there any questions on pre-foreclosures and upcoming auctions? So again, friends, let me quickly, in less than a minute, summarize what we've done. You now understand the foreclosure process, right? Once the owner falls behind, the bank is going to file a lawsuit in the court system because we're a judicial state after the 3rd to 6th month. Okay, at that point, the owner is in pre-foreclosure. And then after 9 months to a year, if the owner hasn't paid, then the judge is going to issue the auction date. So at that point, the owner is officially in foreclosure process. So those are the 2 stages where we come into the picture, but we never, friends, show up at the judicial sale or the judicial auction, sheriff's auction, trustee's auction, or auction. We never show up here, okay? Please, never go here. This is the Shark Tank. This is where you're gonna overpay, pay cash, and sight unseen. So don't show up there. Just buy the property beforehand, right? What are the benefits? You're going to connect with the owner directly. They're going to be extremely motivated. You're going to be able to finance the deal. You're going to be able to see the property from the inside. And most importantly, you have zero competition, okay? You are in a swimming pool. You are not in the ocean with sharks, okay, friends? So that's what we did today. We found some awesome deals. So make sure that you check the ownership, okay? Under the owner loan tab, just to make sure the property has not been sold. Okay, friends, so thank you for joining tonight's webinar, and I look forward to seeing you next week at the webinar. So for those of you who are mothers, happy Mother's Day. Have a great weekend on Sunday. Congratulations, and see you next week. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.